My boss didn't just fire me, he erased me. One minute I was in the Monday meeting, half listening to a slideshow I'd seen in 3 different fonts over the past year. The next minute, my name was being used like a cautionary tale in front of the same people I'd spent 5 years covering for. We can't tolerate this level of negligence, Mark said, pacing slowly behind my chair like he was narrating a documentary about endangered idiots. Grant's mistake with the vendor invoice cost us the client. That's not just sloppy. That's unacceptable. I didn't look up right away. I kept my eyes on the conference table, tracing the grain in the wood, waiting for the part where he'd say we'd talk after the meeting, the part where he'd keep it in-house, like he always promised. That part never came. We'll be parting ways effective today, he added, voice smooth, hands folded in front of him. HR will follow up. The room went quiet in that specific way where no one is on your side, but no one wants to make eye contact either. The intern stopped typing. The sales guy, who loved to call me on Sundays, stared at his notebook like it had suddenly become fascinating. I finally looked at Mark. He didn't look back. Do we need to do this here? I asked, keeping my voice low. He gave me that tight, fake sad expression he used in client apologies. Transparency matters, Grant. The team needs to see that there are consequences. Right. Not for him, obviously. For me. I felt my ears get hot, but I nodded once, stood up, pushed my chair in like I was just stepping out for coffee instead of getting my career shot in the head. HR was already waiting. Of course they were. Lisa stood outside the conference room with a manila folder hugged to her chest like a prop in a training video. Can we talk in my office? She asked. We already did, I said. Apparently. She winced a little, but didn't argue. Let's just get through the formalities. Formalities was a nice word for cutting my access to everything I'd built for them. We walked to my desk together like a divorced couple doing one last stroll through their shared apartment. I grabbed the sad cardboard box they always kept ready, just in case. Laptop, a few photos, the mug my sister bought me that said, World's Okayest Employee. I almost laughed at that one. Your email will be deactivated by end of day, Lisa recited softly. Laptop, keycard, and badge stay here. Your benefits continue through the end of the month. You'll get information about Cobra via mail. Right, I said. Do I at least get the satisfaction of knowing what negligence I'm supposed to have committed? She looked uncomfortable, eyes flicking toward Mark's glass office. He was on the phone already, back turned, as if the mess he'd just made didn't have a face. There were issues with the Hastings account, she said. The overbilling, the late corrections, it's all in the HR packet. I stared at her. You mean the client Mark insisted on rushing through without proper revision? The same one he told me to leave the numbers the way they are because we'd fix it next quarter? Lisa's jaw tightened for just a second. I'm not at liberty to... Right, I cut in, because I'd heard that line enough. You're not at liberty, but you are at will. I get it. We finished the checklist. Keycard surrendered. Laptop on the desk. Badge turned in. I walked toward the elevator, carrying my box like a punchline. At the last second, Lisa jogged up beside me. Wait, she said. Finance will need your corporate card back, too. I frowned. My card was deactivated months ago when we moved to the new system, remember? Everything's on virtual cards now. Right, she said, already flipping through a sheet. Says here your new virtual account's disabled, but your old physical card is still associated with your profile. She shrugged. It probably missed a step. Just cut it up when you get home, okay? She said it like it didn't matter, like it was just a piece of plastic taking up space. I nodded. Sure. I'll take the bullet for IT one last time. She offered me a small, sad smile that didn't reach her eyes. Take care of yourself, Grant. The elevator doors closed, and just like that, 5 years of late nights and, can you just jump on this real quick? Disappeared behind brushed metal. Outside, the February air hit me like a slap. Gray sky, wet sidewalk, the usual smell of exhaust and burnt coffee from the cafe next door. I stood there for a second, hugging the box, looking up at the windows of the office I wasn't allowed to enter anymore. No one was watching. No one ever does once you're officially former. I walked to my car, dumped the box on the back seat, and sat behind the wheel with my hands on 10 and 2. Not turning the key, just staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't look furious, just emptied out. You know that weird silence after a car crash, before anyone starts shouting? That's what it felt like inside my head. I drove, eventually, not home, not yet. I needed something normal to anchor the day, so I pulled into the parking lot of the strip mall, where I always picked up groceries on Sundays. It was Tuesday, middle of the day. The lot was half empty. It felt like cheating somehow, shopping while the rest of the world was still in meetings. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead. I grabbed a cart, walked on autopilot, bread, eggs, pasta, some chicken, coffee. Things you buy when you're pretending everything is fine and that you'll figure out the health insurance problem later. At the checkout, I reached for my wallet and hesitated. Habit made my fingers find the blue corporate card, the one with the company logo I'd been flashing on business trips for years. Flights, hotels, client dinners, 1,000 little swipes that all went through without a second thought. I turned it over between my fingers. Cash or card? The cashier asked. Card, I said before my brain had actually voted on it. I told myself it was just muscle memory. I told myself it would decline, I'd apologize, hand over my personal debit card, make a joke about the joys of unemployment, and that would be the end of it. I inserted the card into the terminal and watched the tiny screen like it was going to deliver a verdict on my character. Processing. The bar hung there longer than it usually did. The cashier glanced at me, polite half-smile frozen in place. The terminal beeped. Approved. I blinked. That'll be $42.19, she said, tearing off the receipt. I took it mechanically, staring at the numbers, at the card in my hand. That corporate logo suddenly felt like something illegal, like I was carrying a badge I no longer had the right to own. Maybe it's just a delay in the system, I thought. It will kill it tonight, not my problem. Out in the parking lot, my phone buzzed before I'd even loaded the bags into the trunk. Unknown number. Hello? Mr. Carter? A crisp, neutral voice. This is Daniel from Weststone Bank's Corporate Security Department. Do you have a moment to verify some recent activity on your business account? My heart did a slow, confused turn. I guess, I said. But that account shouldn't even be active. I was let go this morning. There was the tiniest pause on the line. Not long, but long enough to feel wrong. That is interesting, he said carefully. We just saw a point-of-sale transaction on your physical corporate card. We've also received an automated flag from your company's treasury system. For your security and theirs, we'll need to confirm a few things. For my security? I repeated. Or theirs? Another half-second pause. For both, he said. Can I ask where you currently are, Mr. Carter? I looked around at the dull parking lot, at the cart corral, at the grocery bags sitting in my trunk. Just left the store, I said slowly. Why? He cleared his throat softly, the way people do when they're about to start reading from a different script. Because, sir, he replied, according to our records, the card you just used is linked to a restricted internal account that was supposed to have been frozen 6 months ago, and someone at your former company is very eager to know how you still have access to it. I didn't answer him right away, mostly because the words restricted internal account didn't make sense in a sentence that also contained my name. I think there's some mistake, I said finally. I haven't used that card in months. It should have deactivated it ages ago. That's the issue, Daniel replied, voice tightening by a millimeter. According to our logs, the account tied to your physical card was never offboarded. We're now receiving multiple pings from your company's internal treasury interface. They're requesting clarification. That pause told me everything. The bank wasn't calm. They were trying to sound calm. Look, I said, rubbing my temple. I just bought groceries. $42. That's it. I understand, sir, he said, but that transaction triggered an audit script on the company's side. It normally runs only when unauthorized high-level spending is detected. High level? I repeated. I bought eggs. He exhaled slowly through his nose, a subtle sign he wasn't allowed to say what he actually wanted to. This isn't about eggs at all. Mr. Carter, are you able to come to the bank today? He asked, to verify your identity and possibly surrender the physical card? Something about the phrasing made my stomach tighten. Why would I need to surrender a card I shouldn't even have? I asked. Another small pause. That is precisely the concern. Just then, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Company HQ. Direct line. I stared at the screen. Mr. Carter? Daniel prompted. You're receiving another call? Yeah, I said slowly. From my former employer. Don't answer it, he said. Not until we verify a few things from our side first. I didn't like the way he said verify, as if I were a suspect. But when I looked at the caller ID again, something in my chest tightened. There was no reason for corporate HQ to call me directly. HR maybe, IT maybe, but not the front desk line. Not unless someone was panicking. I'll call you back, I told Daniel and hung up. The HQ call cut off. 2 seconds later, a text came through. Call me, now. MT Mark. Of course. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove home, slowly, watching the rearview mirror, not because I thought someone was following me, but because I felt like I'd accidentally stepped into a room I wasn't supposed to see. When I got inside, I set the groceries down and sat at the table, phone in my hand. Another buzz. This time, an email. Subject, urgent. Contact required from IPO, Treasury and Compliance, Harbrook Solutions. The text was short. Mr. Carter, we detected unauthorized activity linked to a legacy corporate account associated with your employee profile. You are required to contact the compliance office immediately to clarify your involvement. Failure to respond within 1 hour will result in escalation to external review. That last sentence didn't sound like someone speaking to a former employee. It sounded like someone cornered. Before I could process that, my phone rang again. Unknown number. Grant Carter speaking. Grant, a voice hissed, low and furious. What the hell did you do? Mark, I almost hung up right there. I bought groceries, Mark, I said. Sorry if that shook the corporate universe. You used the old card? He snarled. Why? Why would you do that? Because I forgot it was in my wallet, I said evenly. Because HR told me to cut it up when I got home. Because none of this should matter. You don't understand, he said, and his voice cracked in a way that surprised me. Not scared, cornered. Then explain it, I said. A long exhale. Then, that account wasn't supposed to exist anymore. Well, I said, it does, and apparently it's wired into something important. You need to come in, he said. Today. Now. I almost laughed. Mark, you're not my boss anymore. This isn't optional, Grant, he snapped. You activated an internal audit. Compliance is crawling up our backs. Treasury is losing their minds. You need to get in here and tell them you made a mistake before this gets out of control. Out of control? I repeated slowly. From a $40 transaction? He hesitated, just long enough for the truth to peek out. From any transaction, he corrected. You weren't supposed to touch that card. Why? I asked, voice calm. He didn't answer. Mark, I said quietly, what was that account? Silence. Not the angry kind. Not the defensive kind. The I can't say this out loud because it will end me kind. Finally, come to my office, he said. Now. And for your sake, don't talk to the bank again until we've discussed it. Oh, I'm talking to the bank, I said. They reached out before you did. They were a lot nicer. That was a mistake, he almost whispered. Whatever you told them, I told them I bought groceries. That's enough, he said, and the fear in his voice wasn't subtle this time. Grant, listen to me. You need to stop. Right now. You don't know what you've stepped on. I leaned back in my chair. "Mark," I said calmly, "you fired me this morning and blamed me for your screw-up. You don't get to bark orders anymore." "You think this is about orders?" he hissed. "You think this is about you?" He lowered his voice again. "That account wasn't for you, Grant. It was for something else, and you just put a spotlight on it." My pulse picked up. "What's something else?" I asked, but he'd already hung up. I stared at the silent phone in my hand, Mark's last words echoing in my head, but that was just the beginning. I didn't go to the office. Every instinct in me said that walking back into that building would be like stepping into a trap someone forgot to hide properly. Instead, I drove to the branch of Weststone Bank closest to my house, parked, and sat there for a full minute with the engine running. The building looked painfully ordinary. Just beige walls, clean glass, a row of indoor plants visible through the window. Nothing about it said your life is about to flip inside out. Inside, a young teller greeted me with the scripted smile of someone who hadn't yet been told my name was flagged. "Can I help you today?" "I need to speak with Daniel from corporate security," I said. Her smile froze for half a heartbeat. "One moment, please." She made a call, whispered something, hung up. "Right this way, Mr. Carter." They didn't put me in an office. They put me in a small conference room with no windows and a camera in the corner that wasn't pretending to be discreet. Daniel entered 2 minutes later. He was younger than I imagined, maybe mid-30s, dark suit, posture too straight for someone who slept comfortably. "Mr. Carter," he said, closing the door behind him. "Thank you for coming." I folded my arms. I wasn't given much of a choice. He sat opposite me and opened a folder. Paper, not digital. A bad sign. "This is going to sound odd," he began, "but we need you to walk us through your employment separation. The timing is relevant." "You think I stole something?" I asked. "No," he said immediately. "Actually, based on the logs, it seems more likely something was stolen from you." That took the wind out of my lungs. "What does that mean?" He turned the folder toward me. Inside were line items from an account number I didn't recognize, transactions I'd never made. They weren't in my name. They were in the company's, but the account header had my old employee ID linked to it. "None of this is mine," I said, scanning the charges. "These aren't travel expenses. This isn't client stuff." "No," Daniel said. "This is classified as discretionary executive use." He tapped the page. "Yachts, private flight charters, cash withdrawals, restaurant bills large enough to cater an entire wedding." My stomach tightened. "Mark," I whispered. Daniel didn't confirm. He didn't have to. "We've been monitoring this account for irregularities," he continued. "It was created 3 years ago under a legacy corporate framework that's been discontinued. Normally, all accounts from that era were closed, except one. The one tied to my card," I said. "Correct." "And nobody noticed?" "We noticed," he said carefully, "but your company insisted it was an active account. They verified usage. They confirmed approvals. They told us the cardholder, you, was authorized." My pulse spiked. "But I didn't know the account even existed." Daniel nodded, "which means someone used your identity as a mask." The room felt smaller suddenly. "Why would they use my name?" I asked. "Because," Daniel said, "your role gave you authorization for mid-level spending, but not high. If a large transaction hit the system, it would have triggered scrutiny. But if those same funds were routed through a mid-tier account labeled as employee project expenses," he lifted a shoulder, "things slip. And when they fired me," I said slowly, "they thought the mask disappeared with me." "Yes," Daniel said, "your termination froze most of your access, but not the legacy card. The moment you made a small transaction, it activated an audit script. It compared spending over the last quarter, and the numbers." He exhaled softly. "Let's just say they didn't add up." I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of everything settle. So what now? Before Daniel could answer, the conference room door burst open. Not dramatically, not with shouting, just firm, controlled. Two people entered, matching suits, matching expressions, carrying matching black folders. "Mr. Carter," the woman said, "we're with Harbrook Solutions Internal Legal Division. We received notice of your presence here." Daniel stiffened. "This is a bank-led inquiry. You can't just—" "We can," she said calmly, "when the investigation concerns our company's financials." Her partner stepped forward, placing a document in front of me. "This is a formal request for your cooperation," he said. "We need you to clarify your involvement with the restricted account tied to your employee ID." I almost laughed. "My involvement? You people tied that thing to me. I'm the one who's been left in the dark." The woman sat down across from me, folding her hands neatly. "Mr. Carter, we are aware," she said, her voice far gentler than I expected, "that someone may have misused your credentials." "Someone?" I repeated. "Let me guess. Someone with a corner office and a bad habit of blaming other people?" Her jaw clenched, just barely. "Come with us to headquarters," she said. "We'll explain everything." "No," I said. She blinked. "I'm sorry?" I said no. My voice didn't shake. "If you have something to tell me, you can tell me here. Because the last time I walked into that building, I walked out unemployed. I'm not doing that dance again." The two lawyers exchanged a look, one of those silent discussions fluent people in power have. Then the woman sighed. "Your former supervisor, Mark Thompson, has been placed on administrative leave, as of this morning," she said quietly. That landed like a stone. "Why?" I asked. "Because the audit flagged over $200,000 of unauthorized spending routed through your account profile," she replied. "That alone activated a mandatory review. Your grocery purchase simply made the discrepancy visible to the system." 200,000. My head spun. "So the thing he blamed me for," I said, "the mistake, the client issue, was a convenient excuse," she admitted. "We believe he accelerated your termination to avoid scrutiny." I leaned forward. "So tell me why you really want me at headquarters." Her eyes dropped for a moment before meeting mine again. "Because," she said slowly, "we need your testimony. And because the board has already escalated this to senior level oversight. What you triggered today wasn't small." Her colleague added, "That man didn't just misuse funds, Mr. Carter. He tried to bury the trail under your name." The room went still. Daniel looked at me like he was seeing a puzzle piece click into place. I breathed out, long and controlled. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. "And what exactly," I asked quietly, "is happening to Mark right now?" The woman hesitated only a second. "He's being removed from all systems," she said. "Compliance has seized his email records. Security has his badge. He's waiting in an internal review room for an audit hearing." She paused. "And that's only the beginning." My fingers curled slowly against the table. Mark always said I was replaceable, that I didn't matter, that people like me were supporting pieces. Funny thing about supporting pieces. Pull the wrong one and the whole structure comes down. They didn't take me to headquarters in a black car. No dramatic escort. No harsh voices or flashing badges. Just a quiet request to follow them, and a quiet drive across town, and a quiet walk through a lobby I used to cross every morning, with a key card that still sat in a box in HR. Except this time people looked at me differently. Not like an employee, not like a problem. More like a piece of evidence everyone suddenly realized was crucial. Compliance led me to a conference room I'd never been inside, the kind with soundproof walls, dark wood, and a thermostat set to "We're serious." The woman from legal motioned for me to sit. "Someone will be with you shortly," she said before stepping out. I waited alone for 5 minutes. Then the door opened, and a man in his early 60s walked in. The kind of man you only ever see when things have gone terribly wrong or very right. He didn't introduce himself at first. He simply sat down, folded his hands, and studied me. "Mr. Carter," he said finally, "I'm Charles Waverly, Chief Financial Officer." My shoulders stiffened. Even mid-level employees didn't see the CFO unless something was on fire. "I've reviewed the preliminary audit report," he continued, "and I owe you an apology." I blinked. "Sorry." "What?" "For the way your termination was handled," he said, "for the accusations made against you, and for the fact that we failed to identify misconduct that has been happening right under our noses." I didn't respond. Not immediately. He slid a folder toward me. Inside were printed spreadsheets, email logs, approvals, none signed by me, all tied to my ID, and all of it pointed to one man. "Mark Thompson," Waverly said, "has been siphoning funds from multiple internal budgets. He concealed the trail under secondary accounts and used mid-level employee profiles as covers." My jaw tightened. "Mine." "Yes," Waverly said. "Yours was the most convenient, the most insulated. He assumed you wouldn't question anything because you'd never been audited before." "And firing me?" I asked. "His attempt to cut the last thread," he said. "He believed removing you would prevent future flags. But he didn't know your legacy card was still active. He didn't know it was tied into a dormant audit script. And he certainly didn't know a grocery purchase would trip a full system review." A bitter laugh escaped me. $42, I muttered. $42, Waverly echoed. "The most valuable transaction this company has seen in years." I leaned back. "But what happens now?" He closed the folder. "Mark is suspended pending formal investigation. Based on what we've found so far, this will move to law enforcement." Good. Not vindictive. Not triumphant. Just right. "And as for you," he continued, "we would like to offer a settlement in recognition of the damage done to your professional reputation and the mishandling of your termination." He slid another envelope toward me. I didn't open it. "What's the catch?" I asked quietly. "No catch," he said. "But you'll be asked to provide an official statement confirming your lack of involvement in the unauthorized transactions and your cooperation during the external audit." I stared at the envelope, then at him. "I'll give you the statement," I said, "but I'm not coming back to work here." He almost smiled. Not a happy smile, more like a respectful one. "I suspected as much." He stood. "Someone will escort you to finalize the paperwork." Before leaving, he paused at the door. "Mr. Carter, today the company needed you, and you showed integrity. You deserve better than the way you were treated." Then he left. The rest moved fast. Compliance took my sworn statement. Legal went over documents. HR, different representatives this time, processed a revised termination package. I walked out of that building with a cashier's check, a clean record, and something much more important, my name back. Outside, the air felt lighter. Not sweeter, not heroic, just quiet in the way life feels when someone finally stops stepping on your neck. I sat in my car for a while, keys in hand, watching people come and go through the glass doors. Mark never appeared. They'd confined him somewhere deeper in the building, behind closed doors and closed systems and closed futures. What happened to him after that wasn't mine to carry. Choices have invoices. His had finally arrived. At home that evening I made dinner. Simple pasta, something I hadn't eaten in weeks because stress kills hunger. Halfway through cooking, my phone buzzed, a voicemail transcribed as text. "This is Investigator Warren, contacting regarding the ongoing review of Mark Thompson. We'd appreciate a follow-up conversation at your convenience." I deleted it, not because I wouldn't help, just because I didn't want his name on my screen anymore. Another buzz. This time an email from HR. "Your separation is now updated to mutual administrative release, with no misconduct recorded." Good. Not a victory parade, not applause, just the truth restored. I ate dinner standing at the counter, listening to the soft hum of my fridge, the quiet tick of the stove cooling, the gentle settling of a house that belonged entirely to me. When I finished, I opened my wallet, took out the old corporate card and held it between my fingers. A small, stupid rectangle of plastic, a domino that tipped over an entire structure. I cut it cleanly in half and dropped it into the trash. Not dramatic, not symbolic, just done. Peace doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives when the noise finally stops. Mark thought I was gone. He thought I was powerless. He thought firing me would erase the trail. But the thing about people like him, they never notice the one detail that ruins everything. I wasn't hunting them. I wasn't even thinking about them. I was just buying groceries. And sometimes that's enough for the world to balance itself again.